Your eyes, shut your mouth, or the gelf will knock you out. Sneed, 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 Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Doctor What? I'm Jeanette Chen.
And I'm Sarah Trainer.
And today we're going to be talking about Episode 3, The Unquiet Dead. Ooh. Before we even get into it, I loved this episode. I loved this episode so much. I don't know how you felt about it, but I'm obsessed with it.
We're gonna get into it.
Alright, so here's the episode synopsis for those of you who perhaps haven't seen the episode. The dead are roaming the streets of Cardiff in 1869 when the Ninth Doctor and Rose Tyler arrive just in time for Christmas. Teaming up with Charles Dickens, the TARDIS team encountered the Gelf, creatures sucked through the Cardiff Rift from the other end of the universe, their home lost to war. Surely inhabiting dead bodies is wrong, though. Can both sides be helped? Or are these gaseous creatures not to be trusted? Ooh.
That kind of spoils the whole episode in that last sentence.
We were gonna spoil it anyway, so.
No, yeah. That
true.
is,
but if you went to check the synopsis before you watched the episode, it totally would have ruined it.
Do you want to hear some fun facts about the episode?
Yes, I would love to hear some fun facts.
Alright, so she's directed by Euros Lynn. This episode's actually written by Mark, I think it's Gatiss or Gaddis. You know, he played Mycroft Holmes and BBC Sherlock, and he also plays the Nazi in Good Omens.
No way!
Yeah.
No way!
Yeah. I looked that up and I was like, oh my god, I know that guy. They recycle the same 5 British actors, writers, producers for every single British show. So
yeah,
familiar names are going to be cropping up left and right, which I kind of love. So whatchamacallit, the actor for Charles Dickens, his name is Simon Callow, and he's actually a huge fan of Dickens himself, which I feel like you can totally tell that he loves Charles Dickens. He's putting his whole ass and pussy into it. I wrote that in my notes. Yeah.
No, it's so true though, and it's part of what made for me this episode so enjoyable. I could really tell he was loving it so much.
And last but not least, the actress for Gwyneth is Eve Miles, and she eventually plays the main character in one of the most popular Doctor Who spin-offs, Torchwood, Gwen Cooper. And they connect that in the show later on, but I'm not gonna spoil it any further. But
that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it for fun facts.
Wow, how fun. Well, would you like to regale us with your favorite part of the episode?
Okay. My favorite part is Mr. Sneed. He's so unserious. And the synopsis, I was looking up the description on IMDb, and they talk about how the Doctor and Rose are investigating the mysterious mortician, and they make it out to be he is the big bad, what's he up to. He literally is just so he's so nothing.
No, it's so true though, and he's also a shitty mortician.
Yeah,
the way the one part where he's oh, the stiffs, they're waking up, and then he was oh, I mean the dearly departed dead, of course.
Right?
I was obsessed with that.
Yeah, and when Rose is investigating the carriage or whatever, she's talking to them after the Dickens reading, and he just kind of walks up behind her and then chloroforms her.
Yes.
The way that he does it is just so funny to me. He's so nonchalant, and he's well, what did you want me to do? Get her in the carriage. What?
It's so goofy.
It's so goofy, and the way that the actor for Charles Dickens is putting everything into it, and then there's just Mr. Sneed, who's just so unserious the entire time. The juxtaposition is fucking hilarious.
Even the name, like, Mr.
Mr.
Sneed.
Sneed, yeah.
Like, what are you, a freaking Dr. Seuss character? Like, what is this?
The Sneed.
Mr. Sneed, how bad can I sneed? I'm just doing what comes naturally. Okay, I'll stop.
I'm just doing my Sneed. I like, yeah.
Who up doing they sneed? That's so good. That is a really great part. He really was such a good, like, comic relief bit. But
Yeah.
rip Mr. Sneed.
Rip Mr. Sneed, yeah, and then he
The
like gets possessed.
Oh,
The way
man.
he's possessed too, it's like he's not even really. I felt like he was not committed to like being possessed. He was just kind of like, you know.
He was not putting his whole ass and pussy into
No,
it.
but it like made it better.
Yes, I agree. You have to have someone who is not serious, you know? You have to have someone who's unserious. It
Yeah,
makes the rest better.
especially in such a high camp episode as this.
Yes. Ugh, so good. So
Okay,
good.
tell me your favorite part because you seem to like really love this episode. I want to hear like what you have to say.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, you may not know this, but I'm a big, like, I've always been into media where, like, you're seeing historical figures, like,
Hmm.
how they really are, or, like, time traveling media where you go back and you meet historical figures. Like, one of the only episodes of New Who that I've ever seen is the Vincent van Gogh one.
Right, yeah.
And I eat that shit up. I'm like, this is so funny. I love, like, how anachronistic it can be, like, introducing older, like, historical characters to, like, modern slang and, like, modern ways and stuff. And just Charles Dickens as a character in this episode, like, they just got everything right. And I'm a casual Charles Dickens enjoyer. I mean, one of my favorite movies is A Muppet's Christmas Carol.
Hmm.
And so all of the little, like, Charles Dickens references, like him not really believing in the seances, like he was a skeptic in real life. The scene in the carriage where the doctor is like, "Oh, the Charles Dickens, like, I love your work,"
Yeah,
and
yeah,
explaining like what a fan is,
yeah.
and then being like, "Oh, Charlie," and him being like, "Nobody calls me Charlie," and then the doctor's like, "But the ladies do." That really got me. That really, really, really got me.
Also, when he says what the Shakespeare is going on,
That
that
was
was
the
really funny.
first
That
the
got me.
first note in my notes app is what the Shakespeare? I'm gonna say that now. Like, that's just gonna be in my vocabulary. What the Shakespeare? It's so good. Also, as a sidebar, Rose looked so cunty in this episode. Like,
She, okay. I was thinking, like, the way that he was like, you need to go and change. And then she comes back out and, like, her whole, like, all her shoulders are showing and she looks, like, super hot. But I'm also like, you could get dress coded for wearing that in, like, an American high school in, like, the 21st century. Like, I would, like, is that historically accurate? Like, her shoulders are out there.
when they do that shot of her stepping in the snow for the first time and you can see like her stocking, like none of that shit is accurate. Like you just know that those shoes are like Steve Madden or some bullshit. But she looks so good that I'm not even mad.
No, yeah. I think also, like, she does choose the outfit herself, right? Like, the doctor is like, oh, there's like a wardrobe, like, pick out something historically accurate. It's kind of
Yeah.
like Rose's idea of what 1869, like, clothing is.
Yes, which is so darling.
I honestly never really thought about that until, like, just now.
Hmm.
And yeah, darling, such a great descriptor for that. Okay. When Rose steps out and the doctor is like, you look beautiful. And then he's like, well, considering that you're human. And then Rose looks so devastated.
That
I
made me
wanted to
so
punch him in the
mad.
face.
Oh my god, of course you had to say some bullshit like that. Like, she looks incredible.
She does. And like the second that like he has to be like genuine or that like he actually has like a genuine feeling towards another person, he just has to like bury it in some like snide remark. I'm like I'm like watching Doctor Who and I feel like these past like episodes I've just been like ragging on the doctor and how fucking like weird he is.
He deserves it though. Like, high key. Like, the way. He's just so backhanded about everything, especially when it comes to Rose. But I kind of feel that he uses it as a means to not let himself get too attached to her or like
For
show
sure.
how much he does feel about her because there actually were a lot of really, really sweet moments between them that were not necessarily super romantically charged. They were just like very intimate in like a sweet way when the doctor is trying to rescue Rose from the, oh my god, what is it called? The place where you keep dead bodies?
The morgue.
No, not the morgue, but the funeral parlor. The funeral parlor.
I was gonna say like Sneed's place.
Sneed's place.
I need to like incorporate Sneed into like everything I say now.
Sneed, 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 Sneed.
I just got that. I was like, where are they going with this? And then I was like, oh my god, I found
Close
out.
your eyes, shut your mouth, or the gelf will knock you out. Sneed, 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 Sneed. Oh man. But yeah, when he's going to rescue her and he's like, yeah, I gotta go get her. She's 19 and she's under my care. I thought that
Yeah.
was like, I just thought that was really nice. He's like taking responsibility for the fact that he's brought her here and gotten her into this mess. And then at the end where they think they're gonna die and they're just very plainly like, I'm glad I met you. Me too. I just thought that was so nice. It wasn't like a weird declaration of love or anything. It was just kind of genuine platonic care. I really liked that.
Right. Yeah, I do admit that they do have like a lot of chemistry, romantic
Yeah.
or otherwise, especially
Yeah.
in the beginning when they're in the TARDIS. The way that they're flirting, the way that they're making eyes at each other is fucking
Dude.
crazy.
Literally.
Oh my god. No, even in like the last episode, I don't know if I mentioned it, but when he's like pumping the gear on like the lever on the TARDIS and is just like staring directly into her eyes the entire time, like are they like fucking? Like it's I feel like
Not on
it's
my good BBC show.
not
Down boy.
not not in my Doctor Who.
Dude, going all the way to the end of the episode, but when, like, Rose kisses Dickens on the cheek, and then he's like, oh, both of you are going? And the doctor's like, down, boy. That really did something to me. I was like, whoa, what is going on right now?
Elaborate.
That was crazy. That was actually crazy.
What do you mean that did something? Like what did it do?
Oh, I was just like, wow, they're really gonna go there. Like,
Oh,
they're
right,
insinuating
right.
it, you know? No, I would that's scary. What you're implying is scary. I have this joke with one of my friends, my friend Issa. Shout out Issa if you're listening. But my friend
Friend of
Issa,
the
he has a
podcast.
tattoo on his knee that says "snuggle puppy." Like,
Mm-hmm.
and we always joke that they're into like they're a puppy boy, like like
That
oh
that is that
pup
is like
pup self.
directly where my mind went. Like what is that referencing if not that?
So apparently they're like he just likes to snuggle, like snuggle puppy, like
Yeah.
you know.
No, honestly, okay, I get it. I feel like but I'm not like a puppy. Never mind.
Yeah.
I get it though.
Sarah Trainer 2023. I'm not a puppy.
No, like yeah.
Well, anyway, back to the episode. All
to
that
Doctor Who.
aside.
Snuggle Puppy is just like when the Gelf wanted help.
Yeah, they wanted to snuggle inside those corpses, inside those dead bodies. It's true.
Snuggle bodies.
Snuggle bodies. Please help us. Have pity the gelf. Pity the gelf.
Bro, okay, listen. I'm gonna use this as a segue into worst part.
Yeah.
The Gelf were lacking.
Yeah.
As a villain, it's like okay, like I like the twist that they're villains, and I did like how they mentioned the Time War. So I feel like
Yes.
so far we have every episode has a reference to the Time War, first of all, but the first episode and this episode have two villains that were directly affected by the Time War and because of it have become villains. Like they have nothing left. They need resources. It's not even like they're inherently bad. They're just like attacking the earth because they have like literally no other options.
Right.
And I think that is very interesting. I will give it that. But like the I don't want to rag on the CGI, but even like today, by today's standards, if they had just like CGI, like blue ghosts, that would still be like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like they were kind of weak. It was just kind of like, oh, this is like the science version of ghosts slash zombies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, they weren't doing it for me, and I feel like this episode is very much like it's more like plot centered. Last
Mm-hmm.
episode we had a very character and like relationship centered episode, and this one was very plot centered. And with that, I think you need a strong villain to hold it together.
Yeah. Yeah, for
But
sure.
yeah, the Gelf just were not giving in the
The
way that I
Gelth
want
were
them
not
to.
giving.
The Gelf were not giving.
I agree with you to a certain extent because I thought the twist that they were going to be evil, I knew they were going to be evil. Like that was barely a twist to me. And also when they turned evil, the way they got red and their like their voices changed, I was like, "Come on. Like this is come on. Oh, you're evil now, so you're going to be like, "Yes, the Gelth." Like
I have red
girl,
eyes now.
like
Just
oh,
show me.
I'm going from blue to red. Like, that was a little much
It's
for me.
like in Death Note when like L is like blue and light is red to symbolize that L is justice and light is bad.
Yes, yes. But if I say that my favorite pony is Twilight Sparkle, he'll know I'm Kira. Yeah, so that didn't really do it for me, but it is, and it also, I will admit, it is a very plot-centric romp, but I didn't think that the Gelf's, like, weakness as a villain detracted from the strength of the episode because I still
Mm-hmm.
felt that I had a lot of really strong character moments from Rose and the Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of didn't mind as much that the Gelth were kind of like goofy and they were just like, save us, blah, blah, blah. Because I felt that what we got from Rose and the Doctor kind of made up for it, if that makes sense.
Right.
For instance, I mean, Rose, that scene with Rose and Gwyneth in the pantry where they're talking to
Mm.
one another,
My heart.
that was just so amazing. And you can see where Rose is like taking after her mother when she's asking, like, how much are you getting paid? Like, it just brought
Yeah.
me right back to
Yeah.
that workers' comp bit from episode one. And then, like, them kind of bonding and showing each other their, like, different perspectives and you getting to see a bit of how Rose ticks, the way she's Gwyneth says something about her being like a wild thing, and Rose being like, yeah, maybe I am a wild thing. Like, how she perceives herself as someone who is like wild and is willing to take risks is really interesting, especially when later on in the episode, she's trying really hard to get Gwyneth not to take risks. Like, she
Mm.
doesn't want her to put herself in harm's way for the doctor. She even says, like, you don't have to do this. Like, I'm not letting you, talking to the doctor, like, I'm not letting you put her, in the line of fire for whatever, like, one of your plans. And I thought that was a really
Yeah.
interesting move because she is, like, really protective, but why can't she apply that to herself is kind of where I'm at because she's like, oh, I'm this wild thing, like I'm going out with the doctor, like I'm gonna save people, but she can't apply that saving, protective nature to herself is kind of what I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, she's very self-sacrificial in that way. That's really similar to the Doctor too. I never really
Right,
thought about it like
right.
that. Oh my god. Oh my god. We're back to our Pepe Sylvia board. We're connecting the dots.
We're making the connections.
Yeah, definitely. Ah, shit. I had a thought. Oh yeah, when she's talking to the Doctor about it too and she's trying to defend Gwen and he just like completely tears her down and is
Yeah.
like especially when she's talking about the ethics of like using dead bodies as vessels and he's like, well, that's moral relativism, like you better get used to it. And like the way that you can see that she's very deeply like upset by how he's yelling at her and
Yes.
how like he thinks that he's right. But even then, she just still is like even more subdued, yes. Like more beaten down, sure. But she still holds strong and is like, I don't care. I think it's wrong. I'm not letting them use her. That just shows you, I feel like that shows you the core of who she is and like what her values are. because like the parts of her that can't get swept away with the doctor, I feel like are the parts that are going to get her through her journey.
For sure. And I'm so glad you brought that moment up in particular because I think it illustrates another character moment that I found really interesting with the doctor in this episode, that he is willing to be so harsh with her. You know, he can be harsh, like in general, kind of unthinkingly, but he was very deliberately harsh with her because she was standing in the way of him saving the Gelth, whom he, like, internalizes thinking like he did wrong by you know, like that savior complex again, right? That which you see like really in full force in this episode because he's so eager to trust the Gelth and to save them, like to feel like he's doing something right. And he treats Rose really poorly because she's like, "Can we think about this?" And he's like, "Well, I'm just going to dismiss your argument because I need to save these people." And then, of course, it ends up turning out badly for them. But I think it just illustrates, you know, how far he's willing to go just to do right by someone. As soon as they bring up that time war and like, oh, we're dying, he's like, I've got to save them, you know?
Yeah, they really touched on a sore spot. It's now that I'm thinking about it, it's almost like I wrote down like in all caps with like periods in between each word in my notes, the cracks are showing. There's a lot of bonding and chemistry between Rose and the Doctor in this episode, but we also see a lot more contention than we have in these past two episodes. We already know it's not all fun and games, but like they always sort of come out okay. And in this one, I feel like they were a little more somber.
Right.
You know, she's starting to see like how harsh he can be, and also he's starting to see one, how much she can affect him.
Yeah.
And two, like his own traits being mirrored in her. The way that like he wants to save the Gelf and can't back down because like he feels obligated to save these people. She also feels obligated to help Gwyneth, you know? Like she relates to Gwyneth. She wants to protect her. She thinks that Gwyneth doesn't really know what's happening and like she wants to be able to save her in some way. And they both just like clash because of that same trait, just in opposite directions.
Yeah, for sure. The honeymoon phase is ending, it seems.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to see going forward, if it will, and I think it will, how it gets more contentious.
For sure.
Ugh, so good.
What's your worst part? Did we go over that?
No, we didn't. I really didn't have a worst part, I don't think. I mean, I agree with you that the Gelth were underwhelming, but this really just hit on everything I love about like a campy time travel romp. I can't even think of a single thing that I didn't really like.
That's so interesting.
I guess if I were being like a stickler, I would say the historical inaccuracy of the costuming, but I don't care. She serves so much cunt. Like, I don't even give a shit. Oh, and this is also another thing that I wanted to just touch on briefly. I really loved that we got to see more into or hear more about how time works in this show, because there was a lot about how like, oh, isn't this going to affect the timeline, and the Doctor explaining the malleability of time. It was nice to hear them touch upon it because I feel like up until now we've kind of like before now we've just been kind of being like, okay, well, we're traveling through time and space, whatever, but now we're actually talking about how their actions affect the timeline at large, which I think is nice. But yeah. And also the way the Doctor was like, I was at the Trojan War and I pushed boxes at the Boston Tea Party. I was like, no way. Two things that are very relevant to my interests. Guy who's a classicist and an American Revolution buff. Like, when can we see those episodes? I'm just saying. Like,
yeah, I was super curious to see what you would think about this episode because the first time around, like, this was the episode that kind of hooked me. The first couple episodes I wasn't really impressed by the first time I saw them, like way back when. But when I watched like the third, I was like, okay, like there's something to this show. Like, let me keep watching. And then by the time I watched the sixth, which I'm really curious to see what you'll think and like super excited to watch, but we'll get to that. I was like, yeah, I'm obsessed with this show. I'm watching it. It's over. I'm in love. But this one was what like convinced me to keep watching. So I'm really glad that you liked it. I feel like it had sort of like a similar effect. Even though you did like it from the beginning, but yeah, it's really cool to see that.
Yeah.
I felt like this episode, I guess because I went in with like higher expectations than I did with the previous two, it kind of disappointed me. Like,
damn.
Yeah, there were definitely parts of it that I did enjoy, especially those character moments between Rose and the Doctor. But in my opinion, I felt like there weren't enough. And okay, I have to admit, I majored in English in college. I barely did any of the readings, many of which were Charles Dickens. So I feel like if I had read more Dickens and actually like done the assigned reading in those classes, I would have enjoyed the episode better. Even if I had read a lot of Dickens, like I definitely would have enjoyed it more, but I also feel like they could have incorporated him more into the episode in a way that made sense. You mentioned that you saw the Van Gogh episode.
Yes.
I feel like the whole like alien thing was like centered around him in that one.
Right.
Like
this one he just happened to be there and it was kind of like, okay.
Yeah, like
we just wanted to have a historical figure in here for shits and gigs.
Yeah, like that's what it felt like. And this is the first time they're doing this in New Who. So I understand that they're going to stumble a little bit. Like they haven't perfected that formula yet. So it makes sense. I just felt like I was waiting for Dickens to like be incorporated in some larger way, and he just wasn't. He was just there to be like, I'm Charles Dickens, and it's like that can only get you so far. Like it was funny in the carriage scene. He did like the way that they played off each other there was great, but afterwards he just kind of like walked around and made comments until he saved the day. But like it didn't have to be,
which was quite clever. It was quite clever though, and it makes sense that it was him in my mind.
You're the Dickens expert.
I guess I'm the Dick. This is just coming from a guy who really likes A Muppet Christmas Carol. So take my Dickens knowledge with a grain of salt. I have actually read the book though, so that's, my claim to fame. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I can concede that there could have been more substance to this episode, but as you said, it was kind of like the first go of an episode like it, and I can forgive them for that. I think that all of the little details and quirks that me as a person, I really enjoy those kinds of things. It makes up for it for me. But I can understand why it would not make up for it for you.
Right.
But I was wondering, I'm glad you brought this up, because I was wondering how your opinion of the episode had changed from when you first saw it, because I feel like for the last two episodes, you were really impressed. You liked them perhaps even more, or you had deeper thoughts about them. So I was interested to see how your opinion changed with this one. So I'm glad we touched upon it, because it is interesting.
Yeah. I think it really is just going in with my previous expectations. I think also though, last couple episodes, I was kind of taken aback by how deeply they delved into the characters and their relationships with each other, and I was really looking forward to more of that here, and we got it for sure. But I just wanted more. Honestly, I'm a sucker for character driven stories in general.
Yeah.
So I think that this is just because of me and my sensibilities and what I like about just media. And this just didn't hit the mark because of my own personal tastes and expectations.
Right. We'll agree to disagree then for the Unquiet Dead.
Yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from. I respect the opinion. It's just my own brain.
Yes. And same to you. We're shaking hands across the monitor right now.
We're reaching our hands into the screen and feeling the pixels.
Exactly.
Okay, before we end it though, I do have one more thing to say.
Okay,
This
yes.
is in praise of the episode.
Ooh.
Christopher Eccleston and Billie Piper's performances here, I love.
Yes.
Like the subtlety, you can really see just in their subtle facial expressions how they're beginning to like get closer to each other
Mm-hmm.
and exactly how they're feeling and like the complexity to that. Like, I had in my notes in the beginning of the episode when the Doctor and Rose are still on the TARDIS and like he says, "Wow, you look beautiful," and then immediately is just like considering that you're human. It doesn't really feel like a joke, even though I guess he's joking. Like, there's this look that flashes on his face when he's saying considering that's like way too serious, and then he immediately jumps to like that you're human, like this overly like jokey voice.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
writing this all down and I'm like, holy shit, the fact that I got all of this just from like Christopher Eccleston's tone of voice and facial expressions is amazing. Like, he did a great job with that.
Yes, I agree. And there were a lot of moments with Rose, especially in this episode,
Mm-hmm.
where I was like, man, Billie Piper is like putting work in with
Yes.
her facial expressions and her mannerisms. Like, I
Dude.
could really feel her as Rose.
The way that she looks at him when he enters when he exits that burning building alone,
Yeah.
that like
Oh, yeah.
moment of silence when she just like stares at him and they both know that like they both know what she's about to
Gwyneth's
say.
dead.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it
Yeah.
is like I was like taken aback by that. I was like, holy shit. And then when she started talking and
Yeah.
she was like, where is she, like you left her in there, like stuff like that, I honestly felt like that was like unnecessary. Like, I could get all of that just in that look.
From the look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
But I did really love, I loved that scene when he's alone with her in there and he apologizes to her, to Gwyneth, and he apologizes to her, feels the side of her face in what you think is just like kind of a caress, but it's actually him feeling her pulse. I thought that was really clever.
Bro.
And then kissing her on the forehead and saying, I'm sorry. I loved that. That compassion that you don't get when originally he's like, oh, just, get her to bridge the gap, like, whatever. Seeing that compassion is what really makes him, because he would just be some asshole, some childish asshole, if he didn't have a scene like that. But that really just, so good.
Yeah, dude, I didn't even realize that he was checking her pulse.
Yeah,
That's an amazing detail. Thank you for bringing that up. I feel like that
of
totally
course.
changes the scene for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was honestly unsure. Like, I agree with you definitely on your read of that scene, but I was kind of like skeptical because I don't know. I feel like Rose really bonded to Gwyneth like this whole time,
Hmm.
and I kind of felt like I wanted to see Rose say goodbye to her. She's just kind of like told to go off by the Doctor, and she like runs away. Like, I wanted them to have a moment.
Right.
But yeah, that this moment with the Doctor was like necessary to show that compassion, and I do wonder if like
Hmm.
if he had would have acted that way had Rose not have been there. I think that he would have to some extent, but the way that Rose really
Hmm.
like fights for her the entire time and like forces him
Yeah.
over and over again to see that like she's worth something.
Hmm.
I definitely think that Rose contributed to that like moment, and I think that that's really special.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting read, because I didn't really consider that maybe her actions were influencing his behavior in that scene, because of course it's not like Rose can like see him or anything. So it's not like he's putting it on for her, but I think subconsciously you're right that she is slowly like changing him for better, to think more about stuff like that. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I also have one more thing to say. If you don't have anything else to add.
Sure.
Okay. When Rose and Gwyneth are talking, I love that scene. But at the end of like the conversation, when Gwyneth is like, "You'll see your father too one day in heaven," and like all those like little like comments that she makes, like when she gives the Doctor his tea and is like, 2 sugars, just the way you like. Like, I know that it's meant to like hint that at the fact that she's psychic, but I was just like thinking if I was having a conversation with someone and they randomly just like brought up my dead dad and I had like just met them, I would be so freaked out. Like, she's so, the way that she's so nonchalant about it too. Like, eventually she's like, oh, I have the sight, like, don't tell anyone. But at first she's like has no problem just being like, yeah, I know everything about you. Like, it's
Yeah.
it's so weird to me. I like was laughing a little at that.
Yeah, it's definitely a little goofy, and they also, I know it's freaking like Dickensian England, so everybody's Christian, but it was a little heavy-handed when she was like, "Oh, me mom said it's my purpose, like I gotta invite the angels over." I was like, "Okay, girl." Like, okay.
Like
But,
what?
it was still very sweet and it makes sense, but it had me rolling my eyes a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like the way that we view people in the past is like that they were somehow like stupider than we were.
Yeah,
We
yeah. Which even like they say in the episode when Gwyneth is like,
yes.
"Yeah, I know you think I'm stupid," which I thought I was like, "Ooh, okay, a little bite."
Yeah, I liked that for sure. Yeah, I don't I feel like the episode kind of like also endorses the fact that she's stupid, even as they give her a line to like push back against Rose with that.
Mhm.
Because not everyone in the past was just like super devout just because the church was in power. Like there were a lot more religious people than there are today. But like
Mhm.
humans, it's in our nature to question things. It's not as if every single person back then just kind of like had blind faith in God. Like even if they were going to church every Sunday, like I'm sure in their heads they still like questioned their faith. And that's not to like bash on religious people or anything. It's just to say like you can't really portray people from the past in this like uniform manner, you know? Like even when Rose is talking to
Mhm.
her and she's like, "Oh, I bet he has a nice bum," and she's like, "Oh,
Mhm.
I never heard the like," and she like laughs eventually, but like
Mhm.
I don't know, man. I don't really like. It kind of felt
Were
one
you
note.
expecting a more feminist, secular performance
No,
from Gwyneth?
no, I'm. I know that kind of sounds like
See, the
I'm not
feminists are ruining everything.
I'm not okay. This is just like a commentary in general. I feel like in a 45-minute Doctor Who episode, Gwyneth is doing what she has to do for it. I'm not
Yes.
saying that Gwyneth needs to just like have a line that's like, but sometimes I question my faith. I just mean like in general
That
in
would be
media.
straight into the camera. Like a delivery straight into the camera. Like, sometimes I have agnostic thoughts.
Me like in the confessional booth in 5th grade.
Stop. And then they're like, okay, say three Hail Marys and one Our Father, and then you're.
And the next kid goes in like twiddling his thumbs, like I yelled at my mom yesterday.
Oh, classic confession. Classic Catholic confession.
Bro, Catholicism.
Bro. Catholicism. And I think with that, you have anything else to add?
Aside from Catholicism, no, I don't.
Well, we'll catch you and Catholicism in the next episode of Doctor What?